But I wondered if you could summarize what you spoke about last night or the night before about your feelings about the curfew. This was between February 1st and June 3rd. It was an experiment, I guess you could call it that, but there was a lot of interest to see if it would work. And I just thought I could ask you to give a summary, and then maybe we can go into some of the details.
In the last year and a half, our violent crime numbers have definitely shot up as a lot of cities and towns throughout the nation. And Cambridge certainly was not any different. We had 7 homicides last year in 2022, which was a record for the city of Cambridge. We had 8 non-fatal shootings last year. And the amount of shots fired calls we were getting, the aggressive assaults, I thought it was necessary to think of new ways to try to address crime, and also our juvenile crime, and also the safety of our youth out on the streets, especially late at night. So we took it before council to adopt a temporary curfew that would last for 4 months, to be able to compare some crime data at the very end of that and see where we were. In my presentation the other night at the council meeting were those findings. It showed that crime really hadn't decreased as far as juvenile crime for the year before of 2022, from February to June. It was the same. But officers did notice there were less amount of kids out on our city streets at night, which I thought was a very important. It was a tool that we as a city and a police department used, and found that most kids were abiding by that curfew.
It's interesting how you evaluate the success of a program. And of course, you immediately go to, well, did it reduce crime? And well, maybe not. But you're seeing other advantages for this program that go well beyond whatever that metric is. Is that correct?
That's right. Data is data, and it's very important. And we, as a law enforcement and also as a city government, you have to use data and statistics to be able to move forward and look into the future. But outside of that, there's also other measures and parameters that I've noticed with the temporary curfew. We had 35 shot spotter alerts using that shot spotter technology during the hours of the curfew. Some of those were multiple rounds shot in the street. And my thought process on that, if we can keep as many kids off the street under the age of 16, who, in my opinion, should not be on the street after late hours, early morning hours, in the middle of the night to begin with. If we can keep them off the street and away from any dangers, then we need to do it. Yeah. And to the ones that are on the streets, at that hour, why are they out there on those streets? Is it because the home of that the child is living in there's issues, there's problems that we can maybe help address and get it to another agency? And that's what we're trying to take away from this curfew.
The other thing you mentioned at the council meeting was the positive engagement that came between the police and some of these kids. Could you kind of outline what you were thinking of, or what you could share with us?
Yeah, that part really excites me, because we're working hard to become a community-oriented policing agency. And just to touch on that real quick, that isn't just the police department out in the community. That is the community and the police department working together. Yeah. And to do that, you have to get the youth involved, in our young teenagers and kids, and get them trusting the police. I found throughout the temporary curfew and through our school resource officer that's in the Maces Lane Middle School, that most children wanted the curfew, spoke in favor of the curfew, and the officers that were out patrolling late at night saw a group of kids that were making their way along. Instead of them wondering why the officers are pulling up on them, they're in turn turning and say, yeah, yes, sir, we know it's the curfew, we're heading home, which then led to more positive engagement and them knowing that, hey, they're not out to arrest me or think that I'm doing anything wrong. They're just making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do and getting home like where we're supposed to be at.
You did recommend to the council that this be extended for another 12 months. What benchmarks are you going to be looking at over the next 12 months that will kind of help determine the future of such a program?
I think the 12 months will give us, if a council approves this, will give us time to really dig into the crime data, see where it really lands us in 12 months from now. Also, I think the resource part of it, what violations that we've got go to resources and we're able to get to social services or juvenile services. If we have troubled teenagers that we can get to and provide the family or the parents resources. And I think that's very important. And it'll be able to, it's not to get the child in trouble. It's not to get the families in trouble. That's not what the curfew is intended for. It's intended to keep the children safe, recognize issues and problems with the child or at the child's home, that we as a community, not just a police agency, but also state's attorney's office, juvenile services, social services, can really see the bigger picture of what's going on with that child. And that's my hope at the end of those 12 months, if approved by council.
You did mention 18 violations, and there was a lot of curiosity about what happens after you've been cited, and whether your police officers see a pattern of who's out late.
I think, and I think 4 months it gave us a little bit of determination of where the curfew landed us, such as the crime in 4 months, what the positives were in the 4 months. But I think as we go along, we're really going to see, who's abiding by the curfew, what other mechanisms can we put in place and come up with as a city and as a community, such as neighborhood watches, such as police auxiliary, which I really want to get up and running by the end of the year, to not only for the police to be able to identify who's out in the neighborhoods that should not be, but also for neighborhoods themselves to be recognizing it and coming up with systems to be able to help the community they live in as well.
I was interested in the point that you made that at least in one school there was a feeling that the kids really supported this idea. Why do you think kids do like a curfew like this?
I think, most of our children that are living in our city are abiding by the curfew. They're abiding by the rules. And I think in a sense, they may feel safer. They may feel like, I know I'm going to be home at this hour. Why shouldn't the rest of the children be? Most of the time you hear, why should anybody be out at midnight? You hear that coming from the children themselves. Yeah. You have less than, and this is a guesstimation, but you have less than 50 children in our city that are out past curfew doing things they shouldn't be doing, causing havoc, doing property crimes, minor things that shouldn't be. But for the most part, the children, I believe that they take a responsibility to know that, hey, these are the rules and we have to follow the rules. And I think that's a positive thing to be seen in our community.
Chief Todd, when this issue came up several months ago for the council, whether to have this 4-month experiment, there were concerns about individual freedoms, and this had been proposed in other cities and had been highly criticized for a variety of reasons along those lines. Has that changed?
I think it's how police departments handle it and the way that police do their policing today. The standard method of policing was to serve and protect, act on violations and crimes, but it's so much broader today. Policing's changed over just the last few years, where agencies have to adapt to community-oriented policing styles. You know, we still can be proactive. We still can go out and do our proactive things to attack the criminal element out on the street, such as guns. You know, we've recovered double the amount of handguns off of our streets this year than we had this time last year. And that's being proactive in enforcing that. But in turn, we're also doing a community policing standard way of enforcing the law where we try to solve the problems.
Yeah.
And I think curfew violations, just like Baltimore City has enacted, they're doing it in a way not to so much go after the children or go after the parents and put the violations and fine them and send them to court, but it's trying to find a way to solve the problem in the homes that these kids, why are they out on the street at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? Why are they doing the things that they are doing? What can we do to help them and their families? And I think if, as a police department, if you go after that way, and if you think like that, and each officer out on the street patrolling think like that, then I think we can get positive impacts. It doesn't have to be negative.
Well, we have to leave it there. Chief Todd, thank you so much. I look forward to our conversation next month.
I do too. I appreciate your time.